Hello, hello, hello. This is Danny Ceballos with Unleashed Consulting and the Best Boss Bootcamp podcast. Welcome, everybody. So good to have you here. And welcome to our special guest, Tina Asher. Tina, just say hi so everybody can hear your voice.
Hello.
Hey, yeah, so Tina's here, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Tina and the wonderful work that she's doing in building up managers and busy professionals who are teetering, trying to find the balance between life, work, and everything else in between. So I'll tell you a little bit about Tina, and then we'll get into some good interview here. Okay, all right. So Tina Asher is the owner of Build You Up Consulting, and by the way, listener, Build You Up is build and then the letter U, because U is the university of your life. So Build You Up Consulting. As a career coach, author, and trainer, she has made it her mission to help established career professionals get out of the rat race and build up a career that they love. She knows firsthand what the challenges are in balancing a successful career and having time for family and self. When working with clients, Tina combines their God-given talents with her proven science-based tools and high-level mentoring and training to grow their leadership and develop teams that are engaged and productive. Prior to opening up her consulting practice, Tina served as a leader in the mortgage, insurance, and banking industry for over 30 years. And most recently, and why we're having this interview in a lot of ways, is she published her first book, which is amazing. That doesn't say that in her bio. I'm saying that because it really is amazing. The name of the book is Teetering, a frazzled person's guide to embrace change and find balance. And here's the book. It's an awesome book. We're going to tell you how to get it a little bit later, but just wanted to say, welcome, Tina. So good to have you here.
Oh, thank you, Danny. It's so good to see you.
Awesome. Yeah, and Tina and I, full disclosure, have known each other for a bunch of years. Well, we met a bunch of years ago and have stayed in contact in running our own businesses and our own consulting businesses. I have enormous respect for how Tina frames the work that she does with clients, as well as the very, very practical, insightful, tangible ways of mastering this competency of teetering. So I just want to put that in there too. So Tina, why don't you start off, maybe tell us a little bit about, I read your bio, but a little bit more about your story and what brought you to write this book.
Well, as you mentioned, I'd been in the corporate rat race for quite a while. And as much as I gained so much knowledge through that and so many friendships, I found myself getting burnt out very quickly and stressed out. And there are ways to manage that before you get to the point of either having to make a change or being made the change, being forced to make a change. So my passion now as a business owner is to help people figure that out while they're in the midst of all of that, right? How do we find that balance? We don't have to jump ship. We don't have to change. The grass isn't always greener, it's just a different shade. But how do we make ourselves more productive and enthused about the work that we're doing in the environment we are? And sometimes that does mean career transition. And I've helped many clients do that as well. So
That's great. That's great. So yeah, so I would love to talk to you at some point about career transition, but I'm hoping for this interview we talk about what can folks do in their current. The listener for the Best Boss Bootcamp tends to be core managers, those folks in organizations that are really caught between a rock and a hard place in a lot of ways, trying to make sense of, both reporting up and reporting down and reporting across. I mean, there's just so many demands. So I'm hoping we can stay in that space. And I'm looking at one of the things that I highlighted in your book, and I'm hoping you can speak to this a little bit based on what you just said. All my relationships were on autopilot. They were reactive and responsive, not proactive and productive. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and maybe even what you think people can do when they're caught up in the same situation?
sure. I'd like to go back to a previous comment you made, which is so true. That managing up and managing down is such a hard spot for mid-level managers to be in. It's the toughest spot, quite frankly. And we get stuck in a place of not understanding how much we should send down the level to the first rows of our employees and our direct reports, and how much we should move up, and there's a real fine line there. Um, so anyway, as far as being proactive, it's a matter of us really making sure we're owning our day and staying within that rather than checking a thing off the calendar and going to the next item, if that makes sense.
It does make sense, and I'm wondering if you can flesh that out a little bit more. I'm a big believer too in I I say to clients, master your morning and you master your day, master your day and you master your life. And you're saying something similar, which is own your day. Can you talk a little bit about what it takes to own your day?
Yeah, I used to never like the form of time blocking because I don't like to be caught in a box and be so structured. However, it's really given me the freedom to really be proactive. And that means time blocking in as many things as personal as well as strategic planning time, right? When is your best hours of work? You schedule your most important things during that time, and then you give enough buffer so that, because everything tends to go longer than you expect it to go, right? So we need to have that time. We need to have our time so that we can regather our thoughts before our next client, our next meeting with our employees, or whatever that next step is.
Got it. Yeah. So, and in fact, for those folks that are listening that don't know the strategy of time blocking, can you explain what that is?
Sure, it's really taking a block of time and scheduling that for, maybe you exercise first thing in the morning when you get up, and then you're moving into prospecting because you need to bring in new business, or maybe it's your one-on-one meetings with your direct reports, so that, and then you communicate that with everyone involved, and that can be personal and professional, right?
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is the time that I'm going to be available and have my open door policy for you. If it's
Nice.
an emergency, this is how you connect with me. But then make it fun. I have mine color coded. When it's revenue building things, it's in green for money. If it's personal, it's one of my favorite colors. And so there's a strategy with that. So when I look at my week in advance, I can see, okay, I'm really light on my revenue building things and I need to grow the profit line on this business right now.
Nice.
So what can
Yeah.
I do more to have more green there? Or I'm not spending enough quality time with the people that matter most in my life. So where can I add that to my calendar?
Nice. I love that. I love the color. I was going to say this thing is one of my favorite. It's one of my best friends in the world, and folks who are listening, I'm showing just a little old kitchen timer, old school kitchen timer. And to set that up, usually for me, it's an hour, and say, no matter what, an hour, I'm blocking this off, and because I'm going to be doing this particular piece of work. And I'm just going to say, I love the kitchen timer more than my phone or the computer or all that, because it's separate and because I don't use it a lot, right? And it's not tied in with all the other interrupters. So but I don't do the color coding, and I like that you said that. And I think most of our listeners are not business owners; they're in a business or an organization. But to be creative with what those colors are, maybe these are meetings, right? Meetings are in probably in red actually. Meetings are in red. This is individual. This is I call it quadrant two time, right? Which is Stephen Covey's quadrant two, where I'm the strategic time, my thinking time. And that's in green. And like you said, to make sure that you've got the kind of the balance of the spectrum that you want.
Well,
Or
and
that
the other piece to that is it empowers your employees to understand that they can think on their own. I can remember being a leader in a department, and when I was there, I would have a long line outside of my office door
Yes.
asking for questions. But ironically, if I was on vacation or sick, they seemed to figure it out.
Yeah.
So it really helps frame them to say, you already know the answer. I'm here to support you, but here's when you can come and ask. And if it's an emergency, here's the alternative.
I love that. Yeah, that it's empowering ourselves, but it's empowering others too to recognize and respect the schedule. Awesome. Um, so, can I ask you about a couple other things that are in the book that I think are just super helpful for our listeners
Sure
to
thing.
hear and understand? Um, well, so one of the things, and it's a message that I think is super important. Companies tend to do this a lot. They promote a rock star without setting them up for success. Can you tell us a little bit about what the context was for that, why you wrote that, and what do
Oh
you think?
gosh, I think your listeners can relate to this. I think there's so many organizations out there that just because they do something well, they do the task well, or
Yes.
if they're in sales, they're the best sales of sales widgets possible. Doesn't mean they're going to be the best manager or leader. doing that. It's a completely different skill set. And
Amen.
so it's not to say don't promote your superstars, but make sure one, they know what they're getting into, because quite honestly, sometimes they pretend they would rather do their own deal and then go home at night instead of having the responsibility to manage a team and do all of the other
Yeah,
things that are required.
that's right.
But the next thing is, if you're promoting someone in that role, do the due diligence to onboard them like you would a new hire.
Mm,
Let them have the pieces in place to set them up for success. This is what management means. And quite frankly, organizations, they're really trying to decide, whose team are you on? Are you on team
mhm.
of your employees, or are you on team of the company? And there's a fine line there.
Yeah, yeah. I love that you said that. That's really, yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah, yeah. Which team are you on, and which, yeah, and that pretty much underscores the dilemma of middle management, right? It's how to represent, how to be a part, how to advocate for our people, and at the same time recognize that you are in a leadership role. You are, I mean, the work that you need to do is beyond. It's beyond just the folks that you're serving. It's an interesting, right? It's an interesting conundrum.
It is. And quite frankly, the other piece to that is, generally when you're promoting from within, those people have made friendships along their peers, right? So
That's right.
now you have that fine line of friend versus boss. So the next piece that a mid-level manager or a manager can do to set them up for success as they're promoting them is to also set the stage for the rest of the employees, right? So here's what's happening. This person is going to get this position, and just set the groundwork up for that, so that there's not this. And you'll always have a little bit of that, but you just really want to make sure there's a smooth transition to set them up for the
I
small
love that.
wins first.
I love that. I mean, it reminds me of a metaphor I use all the time, and I think it works perfectly well with this. Is you can plant the tree in the garden, right, or you plant the flower in the garden, but make sure that the soil is ready. Make sure you're watering it, nurturing. Like, you just don't take it and just throw it in the dirt. Like, you got to
Yes.
prepare everything so that it grows,
Right.
right? Yeah, and takes root. And the metaphor can go on and on. So awesome. Awesome. All right. One more question about something in the book. And then I'm hoping we can get into some practical tips and tools maybe that you can suggest for us. So you said, this is on page 61. There's a subtle form of teetering. That's a subtle form of teetering, sacrificing what you actually desire for the security of what you've grown accustomed to. Mic drop.
I'm trying to remember the context of that particular
That's all
part
right.
of the book, quite honestly. But I mean,
So you were, I mean, it's in the chapter, Stay Stuck or Fuel a Passion.
okay, yeah, that had to do. I think that I related to a story of my daughter getting stuck and then asking for help, and then she
Yes.
could have remained in her stuff, or yeah, that was
Yes.
exactly what that was about.
Yes.
So you can stay stuck and keep doing the same thing and just go on autopilot, kind of like we talked about earlier, or you can strategically make plans to get yourself ahead. And it doesn't, and I think the problem with that is people think long term of all the things that can go wrong instead of just taking the very next step.
Hmm.
There's not a failure here. It's a win or learn. Win or learn. We win, we learn. That didn't work so well. So now what's my next step? And that's how you move off that teetering and you move into a space where you're gaining balance because
Mhm.
you're taking charge and taking control of that next step.
Mhm.
And if you
Mhm.
learn something from that next step, good or bad,
Mhm.
again, we've learned. So now we move forward and we do something a little bit different.
Yeah, I love that. That's incremental, and it's not a straight path. It's a crooked path. It's a two steps forward, one step back, and that's exactly how it's supposed to be, right? So, and
Well,
no,
it's
you don't.
life. Look at it. Look at how our heartbeat goes, right? Our heartbeat goes up and down. We, see the pattern of that, and that's what our life does too.
Mhm. Yeah, like an EKG, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the word I was trying to
Yeah,
think of.
I can see, yeah. So Tina, the book and your work, I mean, just there's so many good tips and tools and understandings and appreciations. What can you pull out? What are some of your favorite things to work with when you're working with clients that are really like, I'm at my wit's
I'm
end?
going to make it so simple for your listeners. There are two things, whether you are um, trying to figure out how to manage up or manage down. It's what value can you bring to that department or organization? And how can you make your boss's job better? Right? So how can you, and there's a few key questions that you can always learn to ask them to kind of stay abreast of that, because your focus may be different than their focus. So it's always important to sit there and ask the question, what are your top priorities this week or this month? How can I help support you? What can I help take off your plate? And and then what can I do differently? And another important tip for people to recognize is whether they've been employed at the company for years or just recently, is to ask the question, so why did you hire me? Because
Mhm.
sometimes we bring a skill set to the table and we think, oh, we're so good at this or we're so powerful in this area. And that's not really the missing piece of the puzzle they were looking for that turned them on to you. And
Yeah,
so if we are refreshed by that, then we can continually engage in giving them more of that.
I love that. Yeah. And I think you're right. I think it happens all the time, right? That there's this assumption we bring somebody into our organization, onto our team. We know they're skilled and talented. We like them. So we say that's enough, right? So what I think they're going to be bringing and what I hope they're going to be bringing is all they need, right? And then the person who comes on may be thinking something very differently, may right, so there isn't this alignment and this clarity of expectation. I mean, yeah, anyway. So
And that's huge, right? So when we have those one-on-one conversations with our boss or with our direct reports, it's how can I support you and what do I need to do differently? And
I
that
love,
opens the dialogue.
yeah, I love that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's reminding me of the Gallup study, the Gallup research that as far as I know is still true. I mean, it was true up until a few years ago. Maybe it's shifted a little bit. Actually, it seems to me I've read that it has not. And the number one thing that needs to happen is for people to know what is expected of them at work on a regular basis, right? Like clarity of expectations of what do you want, boss? What do
Yes.
you want from me? What is needed here?
That's the
Yeah.
description I like to use with that is, think about getting into your car blindfolded.
Huh, huh, huh.
How far would you go? How fast would you go? How would you know which exit to turn, right? You can't. You need to have a clear roadmap to get to where you need to go.
I love that. And your boss can be that, and to be in partnership with your boss around
Right.
your boss is your GPS. Let's
Yes. I
let's
love that.
look at that metaphor. I love that.
Okay. I'm going to use that, Danny.
Awesome. Um, Tina, what else? Tell me a little bit about what's an example of some of the work that you do with your clients.
So I really customize my success path journey with each person. So it really depends on what their end goal is, but most of it is really just leveling up that career, right? Maybe they're not offered the professional development that they really need within the organization, or they're too embarrassed to ask for it. And so, as you know, we're that confidant that they can come to and help elevate their career or their business, and they can ask the dumb questions so that they can go home and be a better spouse, a better parent, a better partner, whatever that looks like for them. And that's the goal, is going through and customizing and fine tuning their leadership skills, helping them really appreciate, not just tolerate the differences within their team members or
Mm,
colleagues or peers,
mhm, mhm.
and then learning how to make that grow. And grow doesn't always mean bottom line numbers and money, right? It can just mean grow individually or as an employee or as a person.
Right. Love that. Yeah, love that. Yeah. And I think it underscores the importance of being in partnership with somebody like a coach, like a mentor, like no matter where you are in the organizational hierarchy, I mean, and it gets lonelier and lonelier the further up we go in an organization. So to be able to work with somebody that has that appreciation for what is your path, what is specifically your path, and how
Right.
can you support
And
that?
we're unique, and that's what brings us all to this place. We all have our own story, our own skill set, and we all know how to lead differently. It doesn't have to be the domineering person that's the best boss, right? It's all different behavior styles, and we know.
That's great. Tina, I think it would be, I didn't prep you on this, but it's occurring to me. You describe yourself as a woman of faith. You're really clear about that. There's a lot of biblical references in your book. That's not how I work, right? But I have an enormous appreciation for how that can how important that can be for us. So I'm wondering if you want to, if you care to speak to that at all, why your faith is important in this work that you do.
Well, it's because I didn't always do it that way, and I really messed up. I messed up a lot to the detriment of my marriage, to my health, to all different things because I put different priorities in place instead of what was true for me. Everyone has their own thought process and they have their own list of core values. But for me, once I got straight with that, it didn't matter what anyone else thought about me. It didn't matter anything. I was able to be a more confident, strategic leader. And I started using some of that in my, even in the corporate world towards the end. And it probably wasn't supposed to happen, but I did it. And I got a lot of respect for it because people needed that. And you just don't know which seed of hope you can start planting in someone by just not shoving something down someone's throat. It's just literally, this just is for me. It's not for anybody else. Or, it's for you if you want it. But that's what worked for me.
I love that. Yeah. And that's, I mean, that's how you end the book basically is right. To be true to yourself. Right. And that there's power in that sense of being true to yourself. And you basically just said it, torpedoes be damned. Right. It's not about whether,
Yep.
right. It's not about whether you accept me or not. It's about that I am being true to myself and there's power in that. And maybe there's an example that I can set in being that.
Exactly, because we just want the world to be a better place, right? And if we have a part in that, that's great, right? We're doing our part. So,
Exactly. Wonderful. So, Tina, tell us. So, a couple of things. So, first of all, where can people find you if they want to get into your universe and maybe get on your
yeah.
mailing list? Or, yeah,
First off, I respect and appreciate all that you do for leaders. I think you do a fabulous job, and it's been fun watching your business just soar. So
thank you.
thank you for having me. Yes, they can connect with me on LinkedIn at Tina Asher, or if they would like to find out how they can be more motivated or engaged in their work or a better manager in any way, I have a free assessment I'll offer to your listeners, and they can reach out to me on LinkedIn and just request that, and I'll be happy to give it to them.
Okay, and what's that? That's great. So, listener, I hope you took note of that. So, when you connect with Tina, make sure you mention the Best Boss Bootcamp podcast for the assessment. What's your website? Where can people kind of
Yeah,
find out more?
it's Build You Up, and as you said, my company name is U with a like as in the university, so it's BUILDUUP.net. So it's buildyouup.net, and there's a calendar link if you want to connect and just have a conversation. But check it out. I would love to get to know you.
That sounds great. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tina. And listener, I really want to encourage you if how Tina thinks about life, work, all of that resonates for you, just connect with her. Connect with her. You won't regret it, and you can thank me later. So,
Aw,
Tina, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure, and I hope we get to talk again real soon.
you're the best, Danny. Thanks. Bye bye.
Thanks, Tina, and thank you, dear listener. This is Danny Ceballos with the Best Boss Bootcamp podcast. We'll see you next time. Bye now.